Well, hey there, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Janeen Alley. You're listening to Becoming the CEO of Your Life. And today we are talking about your kids growing up and moving on and how to juggle life and loss and entrepreneurship at the same time. So, this might be a little bit of an emotional episode for me of the podcast. Even as I was typing up my notes, the emotions were still very strong and real, but this is life. This is how things go. And I wanted to share some of the things that have been going on in my life since last week, since I created the podcast a week ago. I actually recorded last week's podcast on Monday. Today is also Monday of the week that this episode goes live. And I started to have some serious symptoms that I'm going to be talking about today throughout the show that night. And so I took the rest of the week off. I'm back. I'm here. And I wanted to talk about this because I feel like this isn't something that a lot of women are talking about. And maybe it's because I didn't have any frame of reference to what they were talking about. But to be honest, I've had a lot of friends that have gone through this experience, and I haven't heard a peep, ladies, a peep about this. So there have been, of course, lots of surprises as life moves on. And for a brief moment, when I'm going through some of these things, I've wondered if I'm alone, all alone going through these things. But I know at this point in my life, we are all more alike than we are different. And if this is something that I am experiencing, I know a lot of you are too. So I know as a woman, there are things that are obvious, like childbirth is going to be hard, right? That's not a surprise. But nursing my babies, nobody said a word about that. Holy cow, I'd rather go through the painful process of delivering a baby that lasted a very short period of time than to spend weeks on end in toe curling pain. Every time my baby latched on, I had no idea that that was going to be so painful. And I feel like as my kids have gotten older and are starting to leave the house, I was not prepared for all of the pain of this experience on this side of things. It has blindsided me, my friends. I had no idea. And part of that, like I said, is because nobody's talking about it for sure. But the other part, I know this is true, is as my kids have gotten older, we are very close as a family. I love being with my kids. We have a lot of fun together. But I do know when they were kids that, I mean, my kids were kids and it was pretty hard. And even despite all the challenges, I have found myself just wanting to sit on my couch and watch old home videos of when they were 3. I don't want a 3-year-old, it's true, but I do miss having them be young and be around me and all the silly things that they used to do. They still do silly things, but it's just different now that they're leaving. And I'm going to talk about some of my thoughts today, some of the subconscious thoughts that my brain was coming up with, some of the stories, also what I know to be true and how I'm helping myself through this experience, because like I said, it has been really, really tricky. So I kind of joke sometimes that there is a dark side of awareness. And sometimes it seems like there is, right? Once you're aware, of course, you realize you are responsible for your emotions, which puts you in a very empowered place for sure. And you experience a much more full and incredible life when we're paying attention to our emotions. And I know that you can't experience a true fullness of joy without experiencing a true fullness of pain on the flip side. And I know that I am able to feel at this point so much love and so much joy and so much gratitude for my experience as a parent because of the work that I've done to experience the discomfort in my life. But I also know that there is a price that we need to pay for that. And that is you have to open yourself up to feel whatever is coming up. And in this case, there has been a lot of heartbreak. There has been a lot of grief, surprisingly, grief. There has been a lot of confusion in the process and loss as well. And like I said, I had no idea the intensity of emotions that I would be feeling as my kids started to move on. And they're all doing great things. They're all doing amazing things out in the world. They're making their way and figuring things out. And it's been amazing to watch. And yet at the same time, there's this part of me that is longing for them again, like the olden days of my life, or when they were little. That's the olden days. Okay, but the problem is, in these situations, we have to sometimes do the work to find these emotions and then process them and feel them all the way through. So what I was doing is I was aware of what I was experiencing, but I wasn't allowing myself to process and feel all the way through, because truly experiences like this, I was trying to create an analogy for this, and it's kind of like going on a treasure hunt for a chest full of poop. I mean, that's what it is. Who wants to do that? Who wants to feel that intentionally? No one does, right? And sometimes, in my experience, my subconscious brain has gotten really good at hiding these emotions because I was aware of them, like I said, but I was unaware of the depth of my feelings. What I was doing was I was talking about them, but I was not really feeling them. It was all kind of surfacey in my exploration of these feelings. And it was like I was almost seeing them through the window of a car as I was driving past. I was giving them a little wave. I was like, I see you out there, grief. And then I was moving on with my day instead of stopping to talk, to find out more, and to ask if there was something that I needed actually in the process. And so, with this discomfort that we often feel in times like this, whether it's your kids moving on or some other experience, it's easy for us to push these emotions aside and to find other things to do. And I will say it's particularly challenging when you're surprised that the emotions are even there to begin with. I did a podcast episode, it's not quite 2 years ago, after my sister-in-law passed away from cancer. And those feelings of grief and loss were expected in an experience like that. And so I knew much better how to navigate and process those emotions. But in this experience, like I said, I was just really surprised about the whole thing until they started to manifest in physical pain somewhere else in my body. And that was my wake-up call. And that is what I want to talk about today, because I know a lot of you are experiencing things like this, where you might be in denial of your own human experience. And I want to encourage you to process your emotions because, like I mentioned a little earlier, you cannot feel a fullness of joy and a fullness of the good emotions, the ones that we crave and the ones that we love to feel, without really opening up yourself to the experiences of pain that we have in this life. And so I want to encourage you. I'm going to be talking about how I'm processing, how I'm finding these things out, what I'm doing about it, and all of it today. So, like I mentioned a week ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, with pretty bad back pain. I would say it was probably a level 6 or a 7. It was enough to wake me up and keep me up. And I had been feeling the pain in my back. I even mentioned it and talked about it on the podcast last week. But again, I was not really listening to my body. And so my body was like, hey, I'm going to get your attention. If this is the time that you're quiet and you're able to listen, this is the time that we're going to talk. And so I was up. And this is the thing that I know about my body and about bodies in general and energy work and all of the things, is that our physical aches and pains always have an emotional component to them, even if you accidentally created the pain. Like when you bump your shin when you're trying to make your bed, or you cut your finger when you're cooking dinner. And so I know that these are clues to what is really going on. So I'm always exploring, I'm always asking, okay, if this certain area of my body has a bump or a bruise or a cut or a scrape or whatever, I am thinking, okay, what is this? What is my body trying to tell me in this? And sometimes it's not on the outside, right? Sometimes I'm just noticing like a joint ache, or tight muscles somewhere, or just some random weird thing that I'm like, okay, what is going on? And so I mentioned last week, low back is associated with support. So if your low back is bothering you, it's an indication that you're not supporting yourself well. And so this was the case for me. And so you want to be looking for, okay, what is going on? How can I remedy this situation? What is my body telling me? How do I need to listen better so that you can heal? your body. And if you want to know more about this, my book recommendation for you is You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It's a phenomenal book. It's one that's on my shelf all the time. I'm referencing it, not on the daily, but regularly. And so that one's a good one to explore if this is new to you. So back to my back pain, not supporting myself because I wasn't really listening. And I thought it was, okay, I've got a lot going on, but not really. I have a lot of amazing things happening in my life right now. I've got my business. I have the nonprofit organization that I coach for. I have a lot of community activities that I'm doing, faith-based things that I have going on in my life. And yes, that was part of it. These are all amazing things. And I was holding on to them very tightly. I didn't want to give any of these things up. And so I'm having this conversation with myself in the middle of the night. And it became really clear to me after a couple hours what it was that I needed to let go of. And it was interesting because as soon as I made the decision, and at first, when I first started asking myself these questions, it was like, I'm going to do anything, but I'm not going to let go of that one thing. And it's not my business. It's not the podcast. So don't worry. But I was not willing to let go of this thing. And I was trying to negotiate and I was trying to find a loophole or a way out of it. It was interesting when I finally opened up to the idea that maybe this was the thing for me to surrender and give up and let go of. My body immediately softened and my back pain lessened in that moment. It was incredible. I mean, not to the point where I was feeling good enough to get up and move around and things, but I probably took it from a 7 to a 5. So it wasn't because of the things that I had on my calendar necessarily. It was because these things prevented me from having as much introspective and quiet time as I really needed. And I think too, I was adding more in because of the emotional pain that I was feeling. I know I subconsciously love to buffer with more sometimes. I know this is one of my patterns that if I'm feeling down, I will be looking for things to do. And it is good to be out looking for ways to serve other people, but not when it comes at the expense of your own health long term. Okay. So I know this is so easy for us to do particularly if you're a multi-passionate mom like me and you just have so many things that you're interested in doing with your time and your life. But this is kind of one of those things that was another little wake up morning for me that I needed to really protect this time. And it's hard because it seems like, well, I'm not really doing anything, but we are. That time is so precious because it is that time to connect. It is that time to feel and to really explore what is going on. So at this point, middle of the night, the pain was the thing that I wanted and needed to really address. And so when it was hours of operation for businesses, I was making phone calls and found a chiropractor through a friend of mine who loves her chiropractor. She's always talking about her chiropractor. And I made an appointment with him. And so I'm not sure if I want to go into all the things, but it turns out my psoas muscles were really, really tight. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it is a muscle that is in the core of your body, but it's attached to your back body. So it's attached to your lower back, but it's behind your organs. So it's behind your stomach and your liver, and then it's attached to your hips and then behind your leg bone, your upper leg bone in the back. And so when it's tight, it's pulling forward like a crunch. And I had made an appointment with my massage therapist right after. And I did get adjusted at the chiropractor and I felt better, but it wasn't until I was at her house, I was laying there and I could feel my body wanting to kind of crunch up in that position, just like the fetal position, when I realized where my pain was coming from. And it was coming from my kids growing up and leaving my house. What I realized is, like, thinking back, and of course, this is so obvious in hindsight, as it always is, right? But as I was thinking back, I was like, I really wasn't experiencing back pain until my oldest moved out of the house. And I would write it off as something else, like, oh, maybe I'm teaching too many yoga classes, or, maybe I just have this natural pelvic tilt where I'm crunching my low back a little bit. And maybe it was the way I carried my babies when they were little, or maybe my body is just getting older and this is what it feels like. None of that stuff is true. What I realized was at the same time my oldest was leaving the house and moving on with his life and going on mission and going off to college and growing up and moving on, I realized that this pain was starting to be present in my body. And it really intensified after my daughter left on her mission in January, this last January. My daughter Lucy and I are very close. I'm very close with all of my kids, but she's one that loves to talk and loves to connect and loves to do things with me. And she was living at home through her college experience. She was going to school in Denver and living at home to save money, which was perfect for me because because I love hanging out and being her mom and talking with her. But after she left, I was starting to notice that this pain in my lower back was really starting to intensify. So it was starting to affect even walking, like going on walks. My back would be so fatigued. So hiking was out, teaching yoga was even aggravating it, cooking dinner was aggravating it, standing, sitting, it didn't really matter. It was just really bothering me. So what I want to say is sometimes these things really need the time to be explored. Having your kids grow up and move on is hard to navigate as a parent because on one hand, you're so happy for them. Like I said, you don't want 3-year-olds in your house anymore. So you're happy for them, you're happy for you. And on the other hand, I miss that time in my life terribly. And I will admit here that I'm sure a lot of my nostalgia is kind of burying the really hard days that I had as a mom. I know how hard it is to have kids in your house, all ages, from little kids to bigger kids. It is some days really, really hard to do that. It's kind of like, having babies. I think we forget the pain of childbirth. So we get pregnant again and have more kids, right? It's kind of the same thing with raising your kids. You get to the point you're like, that was amazing. And there were times that were really hard. When Thomas was 11, I had to take him to a child psychologist because his emotions were so big and I was reacting in a way that my emotions were so big. And that was a really challenging and hard time. One of the many, 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 I'm sure that I can give examples for, but I still have 2 kids left at home. And I was catching myself saying things like, I just want to freeze time when I was talking to my husband. And some of the things that I was feeling that I didn't actually vocalize because I didn't want to hurt his feelings was, these are the last of the good years. And just even saying that out loud, I know that that's not true. I know that I have so many things to look forward to, and life will continue to evolve and change and be amazing and also be hard at the same time. But these are the things that I was telling myself a lot of the time. And so when you're going through these experiences, you do want to be really clear on the stories that you're sharing with yourself. You want to be honest about how you're feeling, even if it doesn't really make sense. And even if you logically don't really believe what it is that you're telling yourself, you want to stop and explore and breathe into the grief of your heart, whatever that looks like. So, although I was, like I said, aware of missing my kids, and I was even talking to other women and my husband, surfacey about it, I wasn't processing my emotions. The difference between talking about something and really processing something all the way through is the difference between snorkeling in the ocean and going scuba diving, or even getting into like a submersible and really going on a deep dive and an exploration of the bottom of the ocean and whatever is there. So first, if you are experiencing something like this, I want you to know I understand, I see you, I feel the same kinds of emotions, not exactly the same, but the same kinds of things. And I know some of the experience of loss in parenting happens for other reasons besides having your kids grow up and move on. Sometimes our experiences as a parent are less than idyllic because we are not behaving in a way that we are proud of. I've talked about my own examples with this, where I used to feel kind of like a live wire with my little kids, where I would yell a lot. I was very reactive until I did the work to find the tools to help me to relax and to take care of my sympathetic nervous system in the way that I wanted to. But I will tell you that the coaching work that we do, whether you are getting coached or whether you're doing your own self-coaching work or you're working on regulating your nervous system, these kinds of activities that we do really do pay off. It's why I believe in it so much. It's why I'm talking to you today, is because I want to be here to really encourage you to keep going, whatever it is that you're doing in your life. If you're not doing something, find something that you feel like is small and simple and something that you can do on the regular to help yourself. So one of the things that I will say that's been a little bit validating through this whole process and experience, I love to see when, the work that I have done actually shows up in a positive way on a test. So I will tell you, when I was at the chiropractor, he was doing all kinds of tests. He was taking x-rays and measuring muscle tension all throughout my back and my neck and my head, and also evaluating nerves and everything. And one of the little tests that I did, it was just a 3-minute test. I had to put my middle finger in a little contraption, I'm not sure, but it was measuring how well my body dealt with stress. And even though my muscles were super tight in my back and it was not in balance, I mean, my shoulders are off, my hips were off, so one leg is longer than the other one, which is, I think, fairly normal, but a lot of different things were not where they needed to be. It was not in alignment with my body. Overall, my stress test was a 90 out of 100. And he did tell me, he's like, I don't usually see scores like this when people come into my office for the very first time. And I was really proud of myself because I'm like, way to go, Janeen, little pat on the back. It was a 90 out of 100 when I hadn't had any chiropractic work done. And it's because of all of the work that I do, breathing and restorative yoga and nervous system regulation, all the things that I talk about on the podcast. So even if things aren't perfect, you still have tools at your fingertips that you can be doing and using right now that are going to help you. So what am I doing? What am I really doing to listen better to myself? So these are some of the things that I share with my clients. I can't go as deep, of course, with you guys on the podcast just for time. So if this is something that you are interested in learning more about, that will help you. These are the tools that will help you to become the CEO of your life, because no matter what is going on, even if you're experiencing physical pain, you will be able to have a presence of mind that will help you to think clearly and to be the CEO of your life. It's one of the things that I will preach from the rooftops probably for the rest of my life, because I believe in it so strongly. You are the captain of your ship. And so there needs to be certain rituals or routines in place to help you have that presence of mind. So here are some things that I do that are non-negotiable. Walking is something that I love to do, and it was really difficult when my back was in so much pain. So truth be told, I was not walking probably 2 weeks before I went in to the chiropractor, and I was experiencing all that pain. But like the day after I got the adjustment, I went for an hour walk. I got an 11,000 steps that day, and I was super, super excited. I felt like, okay, I'm back. I'm getting back to where I would like to be. So here is the way that I'm stepping up my walking game after this experience. So all of my walks that I'm doing by myself and for this purpose are going to be 100% unplugged. In the past, I've listened to books and podcasts, and I've talked on the phone to my mom. So sorry, Mom, but I'm not going to be calling you maybe quite as much, but I still will be calling you, I promise. But these walks are intentionally 100% unplugged, and I am just plugging in to myself. How are you feeling? And I'm just doing body scans, like, where am I feeling tension? I wonder what's happening here, or tell me about this experience, and making notes during the day of things that I need to process on my walk. So like I said, I was aware of the grief that I was experiencing having my kids leave, but I didn't make a mental note to be in a space where I'm like, okay, I really need to feel these feelings. I need to be having a conversation with myself and checking in and asking myself, how are you doing with this? And allowing myself to cry and to thrash around if I need to, whatever it is. But we want to have these sacred spaces of time, pockets of time in our days and in our weeks where we can be feeling these kinds of things. So of course, you guys know me. I love restorative yoga and yoga. I do hatha yoga. That's how I'm certified. And I also teach yin and restorative. All these kinds of yoga practices, not just the ones that I'm familiar with, but others as well, are so good at creating a safe space for you to show up and feel all of the things that you are feeling. Sometimes my mind is just too active to sit and meditate. And so I need to create a safe space for myself to breathe and move, using yoga as a moving meditation before I can sit and have more of a calm mind. Otherwise, I sit down to meditate and my brain is like monkey mind. It's like all over the place. And I can't, I mean, I'll sit there for 15 minutes and I really don't know how effective it is. But if I can get my mind in a space where it does feel a little bit more chill, then the meditation I feel like is a lot more effective. So that's the third thing I'm going to talk about is meditation. And like I said, it's best to do, for me, meditation after I've done yoga or after I've done a breathwork practice. So I do breathing exercises 3 times a day, and just kind of depending on what it is that I need. I kind of pick and choose from just depending on how I'm feeling. So these are some of the things that I do to really tune in. I've talked a lot about inner wisdom and connecting to yourself and the value of doing that. And the trick is, though, is you have to do it. I know that for some of you, you're like, that's the last thing I want to do. I have a lot of things going on, and I totally get it. But I'm telling you, these kinds of things are the things that will change your life. When you change your nervous system, you change your life experience. And like I said, it was really fun to see that show up on an actual graph. I was in the green. And like you said, he doesn't see a lot of people that come in that have those kinds of results on day one. So you want to create, regardless of what it is that you choose, you want to create a safe space for you to feel. And you want to approach all the things that come up from this place of unconditional love. So that means you're saying things to yourself like, I see you, I hear you. Of course you feel like that. So there is no judgment in this space, no criticism or trying to talk yourself out of your feelings. I think sometimes we try to help ourselves to feel better, but like, oh, you should be grateful for this, or it's not quite that bad, or look on the bright side, or it's not going to be like that forever. Those are helpful phrases sometimes, but when you are doing this self-exploration work, you just want to be with what is there, where you have and you grant yourself permission to feel anything and listen to the full extent of the story, even if it might sound crazy to your conscious brain or maybe to somebody else if you speak it out loud. But while I'm walking, sometimes I will talk out loud, or I'll cry, or I'll laugh, or I just give myself permission to be a little crazy, maybe, to people who are running past me. There's one of the times of the day that I go walking, there actually aren't a lot of people on the trail, but it does help to not have any AirPods in, because I can hear people coming up if I am feeling a little self-conscious about talking and crying when no one else is around. But you want to have this space where you are curious and you're compassionate about what is going on. How are you doing? What am I feeling? Tell me all the things. What are your struggles? What is it like to be you today? And to really listen to what comes up. This is what we all want. We all want to be seen, and we all want to be heard. And we can do this for ourselves. We don't have to wait for someone else to show up and ask these kinds of questions. We can do this for ourselves. And it is, I think, some of the most important work that we can do, because when we can do it for ourselves, we can do it for other people. It's much easier for us to do it for other people when we know how to show up in this way with unconditional love for ourselves first. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you today. I hope this was helpful. Even if you're not going through this transition phase where kids are moving out of your house, but you're going through something else that's bringing up a lot of things, I hope this is material that you can apply to what it is that you're going through. All right, you guys, that's all I have for you today. If this one was helpful, go ahead and rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. It goes a long way to helping me to grow my audience and to bring the message to more people who need to hear it. And lastly, if you have not booked your free 15-minute Unwavering Woman assessment, I want to encourage you to do that. This is a call that is just chock full of value. It's just you and me, and you are going to walk away with next steps and ways that you can show up with more unwavering conviction in your life. So to book your call, go ahead and go to janeenalley.com/CEO. And I look forward to seeing you over there. All right, you guys, have a beautiful rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Take care. See ya. Bye.